Hello, friends and neighbors. My name is Lawrence, and this is The Language of Water, a channel where we discuss all things related to watercolor. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, watercolor turns those words into elegant verse, and I love them. In this video, I want to talk about how I went from basically no artistic ability at all to painting things like this, or this, or this in less than a year. If that interests you, please click the subscribe button below and continue watching. For more than 40 years, I believed I had no artistic ability at all. The few times in my adult life that I tried to paint or draw anything, it looked like a child had done it and done it badly. Fortunately, I stumbled into the world of watercolor and I decided to make this video and start this channel to let people who have no talent at all learn that there actually is a way forward. Just the fact that you're watching this video right now tells me there's an artist in there somewhere who's tired of watching and wants to come out and participate. I've taken just a handful of online classes, and I'm going to go over each of those. And if you do the same classes in the same order, you may also end up self-identifying as a watercolor artist. I have no affiliation with anyone, and I'm only going to discuss my positive experiences that I would recommend to any beginner. In all of my videos, if a link exists to the thing I'm talking about, I'll include it in the description below. So, one Thanksgiving, I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos on watercolor because they're so beautiful. And I stumbled on a how-to video by Steve Mitchell's Mind of Watercolor YouTube channel. It was a leaf, how to paint one leaf. It's about 12 minutes long, and I watched that video over and over and over and over and over again, at least a dozen times over 2 or 3 days. And finally, I thought, you know what? I'm going to try this. So I went on Amazon, I bought a kind of expensive but not very good watercolor set. It came with a brush and I got some cheap paper and I tried it. I didn't know anything about supplies at this point, and I'm begging you, please don't buy anything until you've seen my supplies for the absolute beginner video. I put on this leaf video, I slow it down, I copy him brushstroke for brushstroke, and at the end I had a pretty decent watercolor leaf. This really got my attention because I'd never been able to do anything like that before, even copying like this. But here's the thing about that. I had never tried copying watercolor. I'd only done like sketching and drawing stuff, sometimes in person, someone saying, now do this, now do that. Always came out terribly. But a pencil stroke, like one stroke of a pencil is a line, right? No matter how you do it. With watercolor, one stroke of a watercolor brush can be an entire tree branch or a whole arm of a figure. All these years of having no talent at all was really just that I had never tried the correct medium for me. And as it turns out, watercolor is the medium for me. I believed you had to draw or sketch first before you could paint. I was very wrong about that. That will become more and more evident in the videos that will be created on this channel. This is weird, along with being very pleased with the watercolor leaf that I had made, I was shocked at all of the negative mind chatter happening while I was painting. You can't do this. You're wasting that color. You're doing it wrong. Why are you even trying this? This is so stupid. You're ruining it. It was shocking, the chatter in my head. I had never before been aware of such blatantly negative thoughts in my own mind. So a very quick aside about that, I grew up really poor by North American standards. For example, I had one pair of shoes a year. The weekend before school started, my mom would get me a pair of shoes because I wasn't allowed to be barefoot in school. And they lasted the school year. And then right as the school year was ending, I either outgrew them or they had a bunch of holes and they were worn out. And so then I was barefoot all summer long until the next school year. So during the summer vacations, my grandmother, who loved me to death, would come and visit. She lived hundreds of miles away, and she was a very accomplished artist, but in oils. So on these once a year visits, she'd get me a coloring book and either some watercolors or crayons, um, just simple stuff from the grocery store. And these were the only art supplies that I had all year long. So for example, I rarely painted the sky or water because that would use up all the blue. It was all about making the supplies last until grandma's next visit a year later. It wasn't about being artistic. And that's what I learned from having meager art supplies as a child. It was about being strategic with resources. It was not about being creative. So I'm on the Mind of Watercolor YouTube channel. I paint this leaf. I'm very happy with it. And I went officially looking online for a course to learn watercolor that I could apply, knowledge I could apply to any painting of my choosing. So on Udemy, I came across this man named Broderick Wong. And he's gotten a bunch of awards and he's been asked to exhibit all over Canada and Europe. And his very first watercolor video on Udemy is called Watercolor Painting for Beginners. He makes everything really easy and fun, and I cannot recommend strongly enough starting there if you're an absolute beginner. Almost immediately, I was doing simple but recognizable art, and to where I was looking at it thinking, I did this? More importantly, I was learning the few basic concepts of watercolor. There's not a lot of them, but they're important basics. How the watercolors interact with each other and with the paper and with brushes. Broderick Wong's Udemy courses were confidence building for me. And for the first time in my life, I started to play with watercolor just for the sake of playing, to see what art supplies did when I was trying to be creative with them rather than trying to make them last. So here's some samples. I want to show you samples. Now, these may seem overly simple for you if you're already any kind of artist, but I only did stick figures up to this point, and they were badly done stick figures. So these were a giant leap forward for me. This got me to do his intermediate techniques and effects course and his flower painting course. And while I was doing Broderick Wong's Udemy courses in watercolor, I found either on the internet or on YouTube or both Anna Mason's botanical artwork and her nature studio. Wow, I'm a huge fan of Anna Mason. She's published a couple of books. She received the gold medal for botanical art from the British Royal Horticultural Society. That's the highest award that they give. And she has lots of beginner projects and intermediate projects and advanced projects on her website. And I did a bunch of the beginner ones where if nothing else, it gets you more and more and more comfortable with what brushes do with paint and how to be more precise and what happens when you do this or what happens when you do that. But I still recommend starting with Broderick Wong on Udemy for the absolute basic beginners, because those basics are important. Anna Mason's site has, I don't know, dozens or hundreds of projects that you can do, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and all of them are beautiful. If you sign up for her website, you're going to make beautiful art, especially if you follow the directions. So the great thing about Anna Mason's site is that the videos, at least the beginner and intermediate videos, are follow along. You can follow her along and paint with her, right? And no matter how long the videos are, they're broken up into 5 or 6 sections, so you can stop them and start them again. That's the thing I love about watercolor is you can stop and start. It's easy to be interrupted because I'm busy. You're also probably busy. And watercolors, you can easily stop and start, unlike oils or acrylics, where once you've put out the paint, if it dries, you're done. You have to start over again. So, so if you're watching this and you already know who Anna Mason is and you're on the fence about signing up for her website, I recommend doing it. Also, if you're going to do it, I would get her brushes they're named after her. They're really good for her type of art. And then also, so I got them. They made a big difference. And then also eventually I got all of the tubes of Winsor & Newton paint that she uses because I had Holbeins. Now I have Winsor & Newton, Holbein, and Daniel Smith, and I was color mixing, trying to match her stuff. So now I have the same paint as well as the same brushes. It's a little bit easier, but it's not at all required. I want to show you some examples of what I got off of the Anna Mason courses. These are obviously more complicated. They took a lot longer to do. They were much harder than anything I had done before, but it was so gratifying to see something like this and then start painting it and end up with something like this, which probably will happen for you too if you do Anna Mason's courses. So all of this encouraged me to go even further. I wanted more formal art education, like something you'd get at a college level. So I did the Evolve Art Education Program. That's long. It can take a year to do that course. So I'm going to do a whole separate video on that. But what I will say about Evolve in this video is I look at the world differently now. I see color and light and shadow differently now. It's an oils course, but it definitely improved my watercolor. I'm a watercolor artist. I don't intend to go back to doing oils, but it was still really good. And I look at most things I would like to paint. I look at them now and I think I could paint that, which I couldn't do before the Evolve course. So I'm gonna do a whole separate video on that. I either paint something every day or I look for something to paint every day. Paint something or paint part of something every day or look for something. So there's a folder on my computer full of photos that either I've taken from this great park not far from where I live. It's got wonderful botanicals, or royalty-free or license-free art, copyright-free art off of the internet that I've saved that I know that I want to paint. And I want to tell you this, when you're in the beginning, when you're learning watercolor or any art, copy existing artwork. It was just like, that's what I did, and I learned a lot from that. Just like when I learned to play the piano when I was a kid, I would play other people's music, like Chopin or Beethoven. I didn't write that, I was copying others. It's really normal to copy other people's artwork. The catch is you can't sell it because it's copyrighted, and you shouldn't even display it. Like if you can, like I've shown you Broderick, Wong and animation stuff, but I've credited them. And were they to ask me to take it down, I would. So it's just something you'll appreciate if you become a watercolor artist. Copyright's an important thing. What I want to say about that is the things I painted the most, copied the most from other people's art was botanical stuff and superhero art. Not whole pages from a comic book, but stuff online. Like I would Google Spider-Man or Wonder Woman, and comic book art really lends itself very well to watercolor art. And I can't show you any of those. I did a bunch of them. I can't show them to you because I don't know who the original artists are, so I can't credit them, and it's copyrighted stuff. So, but definitely copy other people's stuff in the beginning. Just keep it to yourself. It's about learning how to use brushes and paints and wet on wet and dry on wet and all the different techniques. That's what you'll get out of it. Just be cautious. So if you have watched this video up to this point, there's definitely an artist there inside of you who is fed up with just watching. Let that person out. Seriously, take the plunge, and please, please watch my supplies for the absolute beginner video before buying anything. I sincerely hope you join us in this world of watercolor, and I wish you the best of luck. And thanks for watching.